Okay.
Okay. I've got, as always, I've been advised to read the following before we start each meeting. This meeting of the Fox, are we recording now?
Yes, I hit start recording.
Okay. This meeting of the Fox River Valley Public Library District Board of Trustees will be held without a quorum of trustees physically present, but is authorized by the Governor of Illinois pursuant to COVID-19 Executive Order Number 5 dated March 16, 2020, as well as the Governor's Emergency Administrative Act dated June 12, 2020. As board president, I have determined an in-person meeting is not prudent at this time due to the coronavirus pandemic that the governor has declared an emergency. A verbatim recording of this meeting will be made available to the public. In addition, Library Director Lauren Rosenthal is physically present at the library for this meeting. The public notice that we've posted. Due to the current public health concerns and extension of the governor's stay-at-home mandate by Executive Order 2020-33, this meeting is being conducted electronically. Anyone wishing to observe and/or comment must email library board at Fox River Valley Public Library District.info no later than 12 p.m. on Tuesday, August 18th, and will receive online access to the meeting. If you do not have electronic access and would like to make a public statement, you can call the library at 847-428-3661 before 5 p.m. on Thursday, August 18th, and leave a message indicating that you would like your message to be read into the record during the public comments section of the meeting. A recording of this meeting will be available on the library's website by Friday, August 28th. And with that, I'd like to call to order the Fox River Valley Public Library District Board of Trustees meeting for August 18th, 2020, and I have it at 7:04 p.m. Can we have our flag put up, please, for the pledge? Lauren, do we have it?
Yeah, did it not share?
It's
Yes,
there.
it's there.
It's
Okay, yeah, there it is. Okay, would everyone repeat after me the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to
To the flag,
Flag.
United
flag
States
of
of
the
America,
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
stands, one nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all.
Wow, it was almost.
Okay, thank you. Nikki, could we have a roll call, please?
Dave,
Here.
Chris, just hit your space bar. There you go. Mike,
Here.
Brian,
Here.
Nikki is here. Christina,
here.
Richard.
Here. Okay. Public comment. The board recognizes its responsibility to provide an opportunity for anyone wishing to comment at any meeting to do so. Due to current public health concerns, the August 18, 2020 meeting will be conducted electronically. Any person viewing the meeting online and/or wishing to comment will be accommodated in accordance with the public notice, which I read previously. Citizens will not be required to sign in to comment. Do we have anyone from the public that's online with us now that would like to make a statement? Do we have anyone from the public on the telephone that would like to make a statement? Lauren, did we have anybody that left a message for a statement to be read into the record?
No, nobody left a message.
Okay. Then hearing none of those, we'll move on to the president's report. Really don't have anything to report this month. There was no correspondence. So we'll move right on into the director's report. Lauren?
Okay. I'm going to start out. Our Youth Services Manager, Monica Boyer, is going to talk to us about a grant award.
Hi all. So like Lauren said earlier this month, we were notified by Reforma, which is the National Association to promote, well, this is lengthy, I should have taken a whole breath, promote library and information services to Latinos and the Spanish speaking. So we were awarded a grant from them. So the grant is in conjunction with their Night of Stories, which is a family literacy initiative. So we were actually one of 8 libraries nationwide who got this award. So we're very excited. So YS department had already had a program in place, which is titled Storytime with a Luchador, which is a story time that is designated to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month. So what we'll do is, in case you all are not aware, wrestling or luchadores is a big part of Mexican culture. So we'll actually have a story time with some luchadores or wrestlers. So we're really excited. The story time is bound to air on Saturday, September 26th at 10 a.m. on our Facebook and YouTube page.
Thanks, Monica. It was great news. We're very excited for it. We've had
It is great news.
we have not been happy with our grant award track record, and we're hoping that Monica is our good luck charm to so that this will start, grants will start rolling in after this. So well done.
Yeah, so thank you again, obviously, to Reforma for giving us this great gift.
Well, congratulations, Monica. Good work.
Thank you.
Next up on the director's report, we have the IPLAR presentation, and Heather is going to talk to you about all the components of the IPLAR.
Okay, good evening, everyone. So I'm going to be sharing my screen again. So if there's any technical difficulties, be sure to let me know. Hold on one second. Oh, that's weird. It won't let me share my screen. I'm gonna try a different device. I'm using not my usual computer is in the shop tonight. So I'm gonna try doing it on my phone and seeing if it lets me share there. So I'm gonna leave for 1 second. Oh wait, there it is.
Try again, because I had you not as a presenter. I didn't know you were going to screen share.
Oh, okay. Yay. Okay. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yay. Okay. So
Yeah.
tonight I'll be going over the data from our 2020 annual report that we send to the state library. And to be honest, it is not terribly surprising, any of the data that I have to tell you. Basically, to summarize it in brief, our spending and use of digital materials went way up this year, and pretty much more or less everything else was negatively impacted by COVID-19. Before I begin with the individual stats, I just want to note a couple corrections to the copy of the IPLAR that was in the board report. Question 2.14, and don't worry, I'll tell you what these are. I'm not expecting you all to be looking over your IPLAR, which is the total annual attendance and visits to the Dundee Library. In the original was lower than it actually was. It should be 97,379. And this also impacted question 14.13, which is the number of annual visits to both locations. And that number should be 138,833. One last correction is question 819, which relates to the coverage of our surety bond. I left out a couple of zeros, so it should actually be $1,750,000. And kudos to Mike for finding all these. I was able to update our IPLAR, so everything should be correct now. So onward into the individual statistics. And unfortunately, I'm starting out with probably our most depressing statistic, which is the annual visits. And I created graphs for each of these things with the last 5 years of IPLAR data, just for comparison. So this year for annual visits, this is probably the thing that was most impacted by the pandemic and our library being closed. We saw about a 40% decrease in visitors this year. Dundee had been trending slightly downward before we closed, but Randall Oaks had more or less either been about the same as last year or in some months increasing in visitors. One other thing that negatively impacted our visitors for this year happened to be the months that we were closed. While we did have deliveries and curbside in May and then June, we weren't open to the public, and those are two of our most popular months, in particular June, primarily because of summer reading. We have lots of people visiting for the kickoff party and pick up materials and also participate in the program. And that just wasn't the case this year because we weren't open in that capacity in June. And I wanted to give a comparison in how much we were open this year, just to give an idea of how this year was totally different from other years. You can see most years are more or less we're open about the same hours. And this year, because we had to close the library on March 13th, we saw a 30% reduction of hours. And you'll see throughout these statistics, the amount of a 30% reduction appears over and over again. So I think it's safe that a lot of these were tied into the closure because of the pandemic. Next I'm gonna start with financial information. And first off is total operating expenditures. Here we saw a slight increase. Part of this was due to staff expenditures, which I'll get to in a minute. But additionally in this figure is fees for license plate renewals, and we actually wind up getting reimbursed for this money. It shows up in our total revenue. It's just we do spend money outward and then get it back when patrons pay for it. So it's one-to-one reimbursement. But it shows up as an expense. And between the two of them, that counts for a lot of the increase this year. We had about a 4% in total operating revenue, and part of that definitely was the license plate renewals. For staff expenditures, about 2% of this was salary increases, but also driving up the cost was we had more staff who wound up taking the insurance. So we had insurance increases as well as IMRF went up slightly. Okay, moving on to material spending. In March, when we closed, we did a temporary freeze on all physical material ordering because we were not open to receive the materials or process them at that time. However, we did prioritize ebook spending. Overall, this led to about a 9% reduction in material spending for the year. And you'll see how this basically broke down with us spending less money on everything physical and more money on electronic resources. we boosted electronic material spending about 50 grand this year. Next, for personnel, this is unusual, just like more or less everything this year. Generally, our personnel reflects, it's a snapshot of staff we have working on June 30th. However, this year, groups C, D, and E included employees who were furloughed on May 19th. And though these employees were not currently working at the library on June 30th, they are considered employees. They were not laid off, and so we wanted to reflect them in our IFLAR statistics. Most but not all of these employees have returned to the library since. Okay, moving on to programming statistics, and this here is good news, bad news. We had to suspend our programs temporarily in March and basically come up with programming from scratch, doing digital programs. And though we were able to start offering programs again fairly quickly, we weren't able to offer the same volume that we had planned in in-person services or in-person programming. So we saw a reduction in the overall amount of programs offered this year, which led to a reduction in the overall programming attendance. The drop wasn't nearly as bad as we saw in other areas. We saw about an 18% drop in program attendance. And the good news is that the average attendance per program went up this year. And this is due to a couple of very unique factors to this year. By and large, youth programming was our major gain for average attendance per programming. And that was partly because the virtual story times were available more or less on demand for patron, for free on demand, but they could watch them at their leisure. So that increased their attendance. Additionally, summer meal service had a record year. Part of that was that we were serving more meals. We had both breakfast and lunch service at every meal event, and we had more sites, plus the economy wasn't in great shape and unemployment was up. So we had more than double the usual amount of people for summer lunch service this year. Card holders, this stat, I'm going to be honest, not terribly exciting. We just had a minor decrease in the amount of card holders, about 1.3%. We did offer the opportunity for people to sign up for library cards while we were closed online. And we did get several applications, but nowhere near the volume of library card signups that we would usually have while we're open. Okay, material holdings. And this follows the basic trend for all our material stuff. Pretty much anything that is a physical material stayed about the same or decreased slightly, where all of our electronic resources greatly increased this year. So print materials, which are books and magazines, we saw a slight increase, and this was primarily just due to the fact that we didn't have any major reading projects this year for books, where in previous years we had bigger reading projects going on. Ebook holdings almost doubled, and this again was because we were strategically purchasing more of these materials and trying to reduce our hold list for ebooks and Overdrive. Next up is audio recordings. For the physical ones, this includes both music CDs and audiobooks, and we see a slight decrease in holding, and this was due mainly to a major project to redo and make the music CDs, the adult music CDs, more browsable for people. The audiobooks held, those also were very popular while we were closed, and so we purchased a bunch of them, and we see that collection actually doubled. Lastly, we have DVDs and videos, which in our case is DVDs and Blu-rays. That just decreased very minorly this year in terms of physical items held, and the digital videos is a weird story. So this has to do sort of what constitutes a holding per IPLAR, which is that if a item is checked out in Hoopla, it counts as an item held by our library. And in most of the other cases, it didn't really impact the collection in any way, but our e-videos are such a small collection that it constituted a huge increase because more people were using Hoopla to view videos. So it's great that people are using Hoopla, but we didn't actually buy a whole bunch of videos. And there really isn't any available for like Overdrive or Access 360. On to circulation, this mirrors sort of our purchasing and holdings. Overall, circulation went down about 30% this year, and I'll get more into the specifics. For physical circulation, we saw a 36% decrease. And again, this is partly the timing of when we had to close. June is a big month for checkouts for us traditionally. And though we were open for curbside, we did not have near the volume that we would have usually in June. And also a function of we extended all the due dates for being shut down for COVID-19. So we just didn't have the same volume of renewals that we usually have for physical materials, which kind of reduced the overall circ for it. For electronic resources, we saw a big increase here, not a big surprise, about 20% increase. And then on material lending, this is just an interesting trend over the last couple years. In terms of our overall ILL traffic. Now, for the last 4 months of this fiscal year, we weren't able to do any interlibrary loans. So this is just interlibrary loan up to March, but it follows in suit with last year. And mainly what it shows is that we've become a net lender rather than a net borrower, which means that we loan more materials to other libraries than we borrow. And this year's traffic in the proportion was about the same as last year, which means we sent out about 57% of our interlibrary loan traffic was stuff we were lending, and about 33% was what we were borrowing. And I think that's interesting because I think part of the reason why we're dropping so much in the amount of materials that we're borrowing is our selectors have been doing a better job ordering materials that our patrons want. Next, moving on to patron services. Reference questions, we can see kind of a direct correlation to our closures for coronavirus and the amount dropping here. We have about a 33% decrease. And I just want to note, we were offering this service in a limited capacity for the entire time we were closed. We had staff responding to emails very quickly. And we also had phone service when we moved to curbside. However, it just wasn't the same volume, not anywhere close in terms of demand for patrons while we were closed. And one-on-one appointments is an interesting story. So part of this was undoubtedly the coronavirus. Staff, adult and teen services staff continued to conduct one-on-one appointments virtually, but that of course limited the amount of patrons who were interested in having these types of appointments. Also, the reduction in one-on-one appointments was something sort of strategic that we worked on. In previous years, the numbers have been somewhat not inflated, but a large portion of those were patrons who came all the time for one-on-one appointments. Sometimes asking the same question over and over again, which ate up a lot of staff time. So we changed some of the policies for booking these appointments, primarily limiting the amount of appointments people can have per month, and making it something that could be solved within an hour. So while that reduced the total number of appointments, I think it really improved the quality of appointments that we're able to give patrons, because as far as for staff, less of their time is wholly occupied by these one-on-one appointments, and we're able to get more people in rather than just a small group of regulars. Next up is some interesting computer and technology stats. Now, the monthly cost of internet is not terribly exciting. It's a little increase from last year, but more and less in line with previous years. But I do want to note that about 60% of our cost is refunded federally. Public computer sessions. Now, this to me is the most interesting and surprising stat of the evening. And it's surprising because it doesn't really go down that much. And I'm not 100% sure why this is. We were closed for 4 months. You think you would see a significant decrease, but we didn't. And I actually looked back at the monthly numbers, and it wasn't like there was 1 month where all of a sudden it spiked. It more or less was steady throughout, with some months being slightly more popular than others. So my guess is that patrons are just spending less time per session, which is allowing more people to use the computers, but they're never booked, so I'm not 100% sure what the story is there. Lastly, for computer stuff, wireless access, this almost seems to almost directly correspond to when we were closed. We see about 31% decrease here, and we did advertise that this was available in the parking lot, and certainly some of our patrons did take us up on this. But again, the volume was much lower than if we were open. Okay, lastly, I want to talk about staff development and training. And this was a unique year for staff development and training, partially because 2 of the biggest and most influential are more accessible than usual. So PLA, Public Library Association conferences usually happen twice a year, or not twice a year, once every other year, and they're usually remote distances. But this year was in Nashville, so we were able to send more staff to attend. ILA, Illinois Library Association, was also in Tinley Park, so staff were able to commute there and back rather than have to stay overnight. So again, more staff were able to attend that. Lastly, we have the hours of training employees received, and this it was going to be a record year until COVID-19 happened. And then we had to cancel a bunch of stuff. Firstly, our March all staff meeting was canceled, and our May 29th virtual all staff meeting had limited attendance due to staff furlough. Also, several conference events that staff were scheduled to attend, including most notably Reaching Forward, which is for library paraprofessionals, were canceled. So we wound up with kind of a middling year for attendance, but it would have been much higher if not for COVID-19. So that is my summary of the IPLAR report. Please let me know if there's anything I didn't address that you would like me to, or if you have any questions.
Heather, Mike Tennis here. First of all, thanks for addressing the questions I raised. And I believe this was the first year you prepared the IPLAR document, right?
Yes.
So I just wanted to say I thought you did a fine job for first time around, and nice analysis for us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Brian. I was going to also say, Heather, I thought that the presentation was really well structured, and using the OpenGov visuals helped a lot. So I thought that was a good job. Question I had, and this came up in the dashboards too. Have we always counted curbside meal pickup as program attendance? That doesn't feel like a program to me.
Well, this is our first year ever having curbside. In previous years, we've counted it as program attendance because they stayed at the library. And so this year we just counted it as program attendance because it was probably about as close to a program as we could have.
Got it. Okay, so right. So last year when they came to physically pick up the meals, that we did count that as a program attendance.
Yeah, because they stay at the library while they're eating the meal.
Okay. Fair enough.
All right, thank you. I agree. It was so helpful to see the 5-year trend, made understanding the IPLAR much easier.
And it'll be easier to do next year, which is the one.
It does get easier every year. All right, next up in the director's report, we have department reports and dashboard. Did anyone have any questions about either the department reports or the dashboard? Lots of good pictures in the department reports this month.
I had one question actually about yours. This is Nikki. Can you explain compassion is legal?
Compassion
Some music
is my
playing.
mantra right now. I love that. So it started with it was in discussions of furlough and recall, and then thinking about if you have staff members that are concerned about coming back because they live with someone who's in a high risk category, you know, how equal do you need to treat everyone? That is, do you have to apply this blanket policy to every individual? And the HR answer is no. That compassion is legal. That you can say, okay, that you don't have to be recalled from furlough because your personal situation lends you to staying home longer, right? And it's that same mentality that I'm using in thinking about dilemmas that employees face, right? If they've had an exposure, you know, and it's someone who's scheduled to come into the library to work, well, then they should work from home, right? They're not necessarily sick, and I don't want them to go without pay, but we can just do a little bit of schedule rearrangement so that we can keep operations going well here without any risk of a transmission of someone who possibly may be infected. So that is my compassion is legal. We get, I think, too often we're hung up on nitpicking, and this is not a time for that.
Thank you. And then I had one other real quick question for you that I didn't see in anybody's director report. How many employees are still furloughed?
Is it 9? I was just looking at that. It's across all public service departments. I thought it was 9 last time I looked.
I believe that's correct.
So it's about, I think it was it 12 or 13 at last month? So about half of those have come back. Is that roughly?
I think only a couple have come back.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, there would have been 3. If there were 9 out then, and if there were 12 out then, and there's 9 out now, so I think only 3 came back. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I had.
Any other questions for Heather? I'm sorry, for Lauren.
So I had a question, I guess, on library visits. It looks like, if I'm reading the dashboard right, and we said about 5,000 in July. That actually was quite a bit higher maybe than I expected, just based on the times that I've been in the library. So I guess I just wanted to maybe get your qualitative take on what sort of traffic you guys are seeing. I mean, the few times that I've been in, it seems like there's more staff there than patrons almost. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, maybe
it fluctuates during the day. You know, like I am shocked when I'm leaving work how empty it is. But in the morning, you know, we're still having a fair number of people. The afternoons, families are going to Wahoo Woods and they're coming into the library. So it definitely fluctuates more during the day. But programs were a giant draw of people in the door. When you have a program for 100 people, that was a lot more visitors. And we had programs every day. We had people in here for programs every single day. So not having programs is a big drop in visits.
Okay.
Right. Then I'm done with the director's report.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the consent agenda. Before I ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda, are there any items that any trustees would like left off for further discussion? Hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve items A1A through A1J of the consent agenda. May I have such a motion, please?
So moved, Brian.
Mike
Brian
Tennyson.
moved. Mike Tennis seconded. Nikki, could we have a roll call, please?
Dave. Dave,
Yes.
thank you. Chris.
Here.
Chris.
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Nikki is yes. Christina,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes. Okay, we have no unfinished business tonight, so we'll move on to the new business. Exhibit C1, which is the Illinois Public Library Annual Report, better known as IPLAR. May I have a motion to approve the draft Illinois Public Library Annual Report IPLAR for fiscal year 2019 and 20, and authorize the director to file it with the state library electronically. May I have such a motion?
I move to approve the IPLAR.
I second it.
Who made the motion?
Christina.
Okay, good. And second?
Yes.
Okay, Chris, okay. Well, we've heard the presentation, which I thought was done very well. I liked the visuals. I gave some real meaning to the presentation. Does anyone have any comments? Okay, hearing none, let's go to a vote. Nikki, could we have a roll call, please?
Dave,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Nikki, yes. Christina,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes. Okay, moving on to Exhibit C2, Janet King Cleaning and Janitorial Services Agreement. May I have a motion to authorize the director to enter into a service agreement with Janet King of Illinois to clean the Randall Oaks Library for an amount of $1,450 per month. May I have such a motion, please?
I move to approve Janet King.
Okay.
Nikki seconds.
Okay, second. Okay. I think everybody got that exhibit, but when on close examination, The numbers, although they appear in monthly columns, they really reflect annual amounts. Lauren, do you have any comments on why this was necessary?
Yeah, I'm sorry for the confusion. As I looked at it afterwards, I was like, yes, it definitely looks like 17,400 a month, but it's not. That would be the annual cost. We had gone to bid for janitorial service back in February, and so it wasn't long ago that we already talked to 12 different companies about cleaning. And so when we were adding on additional service to clean Randall Oaks, we didn't go to bid since we had just done it. There was a question about having Randall Oaks staff clean Randall Oaks Library, the Park District staff, and that was the first place we went to before we talked to Jana King. But it's not. That is not something that the Park District is interested in taking on. So we needed to use a janitorial service company because while our original plan was to have our former custodian do some light dusting and vacuuming, we now need to sanitize every day. And the minimum cost to come out 7 days a week is the, excuse me, is the $14.50. So that's just what the cost is to come out, to guarantee daily service. So.
Are there any comments or questions from any board members?
Mike Tennis here.
Okay.
My comment is the disproportionate costs with the Randall Oaks being 5,000 square feet and Dundee Library 30,000 square feet. It's works out to 98 cents a square foot for Dundee Library and $3.48 a square foot for Randall Oaks. Randall Oaks seems quite expensive by comparison.
I think that probably
Mike,
is kind of like, when you have a repair guy come out, you pay a trip charge, whether you're getting a $5 part replaced or a $5,000 part replaced, the trip charge is always the same. It kind of makes sense.
Also, Mike, I think your numbers were based on that annual amount. The monthly fee is $1,450. So that comes out to 29 cents per square foot. Again, I think there was some confusion in the table that we saw.
Even so, Richard, my point is the disproportionate cost per square foot.
Well, Lauren, didn't you tell me that $1,450 was the minimum?
That is correct.
For that service?
Yeah, I mean, if we wanted to hire them to come out and clean a 20 square foot place, it would be the same $1,450. You can't say, oh, it's 98 cents per square foot, so I'm gonna extrapolate that into a smaller space. The minimum is the $1,450, no matter how small.
Yeah, so we're kind of caught in this minimum costing deal, and they are coming out and using sanitizers and all that kind of stuff. So
and it's 7 days a week, right? It's 31 days.
Yeah.
For that $1,450. So
yeah. So it's a smaller space, but they still have to bring the equipment. They still have to bring the trained technicians and
there is a bathroom.
So
I did want to let you know, we do have a bathroom at Randall Oaks, a staff bathroom that they're cleaning.
But just to make sure I'm reading the table right, what we're basically saying is if this previous custodian had stayed on staff, it would have run us $51,000 for his salary plus the weekend service. And now by moving to this plan to have Jana King do both facilities, it's going to cost us $46,000. Am I reading that
No,
right?
when the custodian worked here full time, our total cost was $51,125 to have the buildings cleaned.
Right.
When he retired, the original plan was for him to come back 16 hours a week. That would have cost $12,000 for his salary, another $1,000 for FICA, and then the $29,304 for Dundee. Now he's not coming back. So the third column is, as of August 2020, our total payments would be $29,304 for the outside service to clean Dundee and $17,400 for the outside service to clean Randall Oaks. So we're still $5,000 cheaper than what we had been prior to the custodian retiring.
Got it.
And we'll have the buildings sanitized every day.
Any thoughts about?
He was coming back under Jana King or something. That was the deal, and that's where he.
Oh, no. He was coming back as a staff member, but now he's not coming back at all.
Got it. So that was column 2. The middle column was when he was going to come back. Okay.
Correct.
I understand now.
It made perfect sense to me when I put all this together, but as soon as I started looking at it through the boards, I was like, yeah, I could have done a better job explaining that.
Mike, are your questions answered?
One final question is, why not go to bid?
We had just gone to bid. It is an enormous amount of work to go to bid, meeting with all the suppliers to come out to the place. If it had been a year since we had bid out Dundee, then I would have felt like, oh, we need to see where they're at. But this is a process that we had just done.
And Lauren, are they doing a good job?
Yeah, we've been happy with them. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I could see, at least from my perspective, I could see why we would just have them add that service on for the period till we see where this virus goes.
Right.
And whether this is going to have to be something we maintain from now till who knows when. In that case, when we get to the year, I think we need to rebid everything.
Agreed. I have a hard time imagining doing this starting next year. I can't believe we need to sanitize every light switch every day.
Anything else? Nikki, could we have a roll call vote?
Dave,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mike,
No.
Brian,
Yes.
Nikki is yes, Christina,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes. Okay, moving on to Exhibit C3, Equipment Maintenance Agreement Renewal. May I have a motion to approve the annual equipment maintenance agreements for the Biblioteca 3M equipment software in the amount not to exceed $42,200?
Nikki makes a motion
May I have such a
to
motion?
approve the equipment maintenance agreement renewal for Biblioteca. Not to exceed $42,000.
Chris seconds the motion.
Okay, this is a recurring expense that we see for the maintenance of our electronic sorting equipment, etc. Is there anything we need to note, Lauren, on this year's?
I was really happy that John, was thinking about the cost of the equipment, that some of what was under this contract was not stuff that was terribly expensive or prone to multiple breakdowns every year. So he did eliminate some equipment from the maintenance agreement, the RFID pads, the unchecker pads. So that's saving the library several $1,000s. Very happy about that. Did a good cost benefit analysis of the risks involved in not having it under the agreement. So yeah, we're looking at a reduction from last year's cost.
Yeah, according to your exhibit, last year it was 47,600 and change. So we've taken it down about almost $5,000.
Yep.
So good. Any discussions, question on this item of business? Hearing none, Nikki, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Dave,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Nikki is yes, Christina,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes. Okay, that's all of the new business for tonight. We will be going into executive session. And I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session in accordance with 5 ILCS 120/2 C5, the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the public body, including meetings held for the purpose of discussing whether a particular parcel should be acquired, and also 5 ILCS 120/2 C21, discussion of minutes of meetings lawfully closed under this act, whether for purposes of approval by the body of the minutes or the semi-annual minutes review of the minutes mandated by section 2.06 of the act. May I have such a motion?
So moved, Brian.
Chris
Brian
second.
moves.
And I heard Chris second.
Okay, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Dave,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Nikki is yes, Christina,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes, we are adjourned at 7:53.
So I paused the, okay. So that was called to order at 8:57. Roll call, Dave is absent. Chris,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Nikki, yes, Christina,
Yep.
Richard.
Yes. Okay, there's no other business to be conducted tonight, so I'll entertain a motion to officially adjourn for the evening at 8:58.
So moved.
Okay, roll call, please.
Did I get a second? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Brian was first and I was second.
Okay, thank you. Dave is absent. Chris,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Nikki, yes, Christina,
Yes.
Richard.
Yes. Okay, we are officially adjourned.